What if the handshake that seals your dream job is decided long before you ever speak, determined instead by the unseen rivers of qi, pronounced qi, the ancient word for vital energy that swirl through the interview room like currents? Under still water, picture stepping into a sleek glass office where sunlight fractures across polished chrome, yet every beam and shadow bends obediently to the pull of an invisible compass. Your chair, then, is no longer just furniture. It becomes a transmitter, either amplifying your presence or draining your power. Here lies the paradox that cracks the conventional mold. While global corporations pour fortunes into leadership training, a Dynasty-era manual quietly insists that angling your seat a mere 15 degrees toward the auspicious interview direction can shift destiny in your favor. Could such a slight pivot truly outperform years of curated corporate grooming? Imagine a rapid montage. Satellite images charting global trade winds dissolve into a time-worn ink painting of the Bagua, the octagonal Feng Shui map that divides human experience like a cosmic circuit board. A drone arcs over New York's skyline before plunging through a revolving door and onto a single chair, perfectly aligned with the metal water sector, where sharp strategy metal meets graceful adaptation water. In the breath before a word is spoken, the angle alone begins to whisper power. It no longer feels like superstition. It feels like a hidden algorithm. Align with heaven above, align with earth below, and negotiations will unfold like silk. Murmurs a scroll from ancient China, penned during the Ming dynasty. The script fades, replaced by modern statistics. Hiring managers unconsciously favor candidates seated where soft, natural light grazes the face, a phenomenon behavioral economists term the warm halo. Yet Feng Shui codified this effect centuries ago under the principle of Ming Guang, balanced brightness that invites rather than overwhelms. So, as we peel back the layers of forgotten geomantic principles and modern cognitive data, one question hovers brilliant, unsettling. If success in the interview chamber can be shifted by orientation alone, then what other invisible levers have we left untouched? Keep watching, because the next doorway you walk through might already be steering the arc of your fate. In the shadowed vaults of Beijing's National Library, beneath tempered glass and low-lux lighting, rests a palm-sized bronze relic. Its corroded needle, unmoved by time, still aligns, after over 2 millennia, with Earth's magnetic pulse. Encircling its rim are 8 arcane glyphs, symbols more ancient than paper, yet somehow whispering fluently in the language of modern human resources. Identified by archaeologist Xiao Shenhuai as a Han Dynasty South Point in Spoon, ancient China, 1st century BCE, this artifact stands as the earliest known compass in history. Its purpose was singular and absolute: determine auspicious orientation before decisions of power. From Ming Dynasty grain officers to Qing Dynasty treaty envoys, generations of statecraft began with instruments just like this, quietly shifting the course of empires through the simple question, where should one sit? Beneath this tool lies the philosophical bedrock of Tao Te Ching. In Chapter 3, Laozi writes, "Empty the mind. Fill the belly, weaken ambition, strengthen the bones." And then, Wu Wei or Wu Bu Wei, do nothing yet leave nothing undone. Penned during the Warring States period, ancient China, late 4th century BCE, the passage is often mistaken for passivity. But in spatial terms, it is meticulous. Instruction, empty the mind, corresponds to clearing the Ming Thames, the bright hall space directly in front of a seat of power. No clutter, no barriers. Let intention radiate freely. In ancient courts, this principle manifested in architecture. In modern offices, it becomes the logic behind executive sightlines that sweep across open-plan spaces. Cambridge's Needham Research Institute traces the term Feng Shui to Gua. Pugh's Book of Burial, Ancient China, Jin Dynasty, 4th century CE, which proclaims, Qi rides the wind and scatters, but is retained when it encounters water. Wind disperses focus, water gathers it. In today's interview room, this principle translates simply: do not sit beneath direct air vents, and place yourself where transparent surfaces collect rather than scatter. The interviewer's gaze. Fast forward to the 21st century, Harvard Business School's 2016 case study, Leading from the Side, tracks 128 product teams over 18 months. Their discovery: leaders who positioned themselves at diagonal, non-oppositional angles during kickoff meetings boosted group creativity scores by 23%. Professor Linda Hill attributes this effect to a subconscious drop in threat perception. No one likes to be stared down. The slight pivot reduces friction and promotes flow, precisely what Feng Shui recommends in the metal-water axis, where sharp analysis, metal, meets empathy and flexibility, water. History offers dramatic reinforcement. Emperor Wen of Han, famed for cutting taxes while doubling reserves, once relocated his throne to Qi northeast after a court geomancer warned that his current seat was cutting the halls. Qi like a paddle against current. According to the Book of Han, Ancient China, 1st century CE, within 3 harvests, rebellion reports fell by 1/3. Agrarian reform, yes, but the chroniclers explicitly cite reorientation of the audience hall as a key turning point. In 2022, Stanford historian Mark Lewis subjected these records to spectral analysis. The marginal notes were confirmed as original, vindicating, however subtly, the logic of geomancy in the age of data. Further evidence lies hidden in Kyoto's TG Temple at Anjira. Silk map of Chang'an reveals that each government ministry, aligned with elemental virtues, justice to the west metal, commerce to the north water, while Japanese monks imported Mahayana sutras, they borrowed just as eagerly from Chinese urban grids. Feng Shui was already crossing borders before CVs ever did. Zoom forward again, inside Amazon HQ2 in Arlington. Meeting room D3 is rumored among staff to be a creative vortex. Internal memos reveal that software architect Daniel Cho had chairs subtly angled 18 degrees southeast after reading Lin Yun's interpretation of the classic of mountains and seas. Over the next 6 quarters, more patent-worthy ideas emerged from D3 than any other room on campus. Amazon's facilities team, hardly known for Auspicious, since codified this configuration as the harmonious diagonal in their global design standards. Directionality is not just ergonomics, it is ritual. In a Shu dynasty bamboo strip unearthed from an ancient tomb, coronation rites instruct: face the azure dragon, let the white tiger guard your flank. In compass terms, the ruler should incline toward east-southeast, the position of auspicious beginnings, while the west remains guarded. Interviewees unconsciously mirror this. When seated with a doorway behind the panel, retreat behind, opportunity ahead, they echo the mythic alignment without ever knowing the myth. Modern studies affirm the old patterns. In 2021, sociolinguists at the University of Toronto recorded 312 interviews. Candidates angled slightly toward the room's light source a bit, not directly at the interviewer, received 19% higher likability ratings. panelists described them as having a balanced presence and soothing symmetry. The researchers, unaware they had resurrected a classical principle, dubbed this the diagonal warmth effect. Digital trends reveal parallel truths. In 2024, Google's TensorFlow team found users spent significantly more time on thumbnails, where the subject's face was angled at 30 degrees, rather than staring straight ahead. Machines may not grasp key, but they know what we linger on. Design theorist Ellen Lupton calls this invitation over demand. The diagonal invites, it does not confront. Emperor Wen's rotated throne, too, pointed subtly toward the Wei River in the 5 elements. Water is wisdom and gestation. Metal is decision and refinement. To face the river was to invite reflection before resolution, a practice now re-emerging in leadership coaching models that emphasize deep listening. Harvard's case study confirms that teams led from listening corners outperformed directorial command by 31% in launch effectiveness. Western echoes abound. Vitruvius, in De Architectura, recommends that audience halls face the morning sun to instill clarity. Medieval monasteries designed chapter houses so that diagonal light would travel across the monks. Faces a literal enlightenment before speech. Europe had no formal 5-element theory, yet its instinct for auspicious orientation aligns with China's, as if human cognition itself prefers the gentle off-angle across materials and centuries. One thread gleams, orientation changes, are rarely more than 30 degrees, but their effects ripple across legacies. The Luopan's ancient spoon becomes a modern desk chair's swivel. A webcam's subtle tilt, the soft slant of a LinkedIn profile picture. What stargazers once divined is now embedded in spatial branding strategies and hiring analytics. The silent thesis remains. Those who sit where key gathers, not collides, are more likely to be remembered. So the archives imperial, monastic, digital arrive at the same truth. Before any word is uttered, before any slide is shown, the room has already begun the negotiation. The next time you step into an interview chamber, think of the south-pointing spoon, Emperor Wen's pivoted throne, and the Amazon engineers coding creativity into angles. Beneath polished floors, the world's oldest operating system continues to whisper. All you must do is turn until the room breathes sand. Let centuries of silence speak on your behalf. The archives have spoken, the scrolls have whispered, and the geometry of angles now glows like a constellation etched across the ceiling of the mind. Yet knowing is not enough. Constellations don't guide unless we move beneath them. This is where principle becomes practice, where invisible lines translate into choices of breath, posture, and presence. Picture 3 lenses, slowly rotating into clarity. The river model of flow, the yin-yang tension of posture, and the motivation mirror that reflects inner drive into outer poise. Together, they become a silent choreographical in inches of pivot, yet felt in the ripple of confidence returning to still water. Begin with the river model. The desk becomes your riverbed. Sunlight, ventilation, and foot traffic stir the air like eddies and currents, stagnant pools that breed distraction, sharp rapids that overstimulate, and smooth midstream paths that nourish focus. In spatial psychology, these map onto zones of resistance, assisted flow, and efficiency. Sit directly in front of a doorway, and you place yourself in a headwind. Each passing footstep or gust a knock against your mental sail. Sit with your back to a solid wall, and you may find yourself in a psychological backwater where ideas slow and settle into lethargy. But pivot to the midcurrent diagonal, a gentle angle where air brushes the skin and movement dances at the edge of perception, and the mind activates. Thermal imaging at the University of Copenhagen reveals that subjects seated here show a 12% increase in prefrontal oxygenation. The brain, like a river in laminar flow, runs smooth and strong. Zoom closer and the river resolves into rhythm, yin and yang, the eternal dance of yielding and assertion. In an interview setting, yang is forward lean, direct gaze, the precise edge of a resume folder. Yin is the open palm, the receptive nod, the softened glance. Western business coaches may warn against mirroring too much, but the Zhou Yi ancient China, 11th century BCE teaches, the soft overcomes the hard. Tilt a few degrees closer, and yang intensifies direct, cutting, focused. Swivel slightly away, and yin diffusing vitting, open, calm. A 2023 MIT Media Lab study placed sensors on interviewees and discovered that hiring likelihood peaked not with static posture, but with fluid oscillation between yin and yang, each shift synchronized with a 12-second breath cycle. The optimal flow patterns emerged in the metal-water sector of the room. It was as if ancient wisdom had mapped the body's own choreography long before motion tracking confirmed it. Now the third lens comes into view, the motivation mirror, refracting self-determination theory through the prism of spatial alignment. According to SDT, motivation flows from three needs: autonomy, competence, and relatedness. These needs can be spatially activated. Autonomy aligns with the angle of retreat. When your chair grants you clear sight lines to the door, the body feels in control. Competence rises from verticality. When your shoulders align with overhead beams or lights, posture and purpose align. Relatedness softens across the diagonal. When you're not in direct confrontation, your presence reads as collaborative, not combative. Together, these directions sketch the character Swen, Juan, an ancient ideogram whose top curve hooks downward like a question, while its base flares wide like open arms. Modern neuroscience echoes this symbol. Sirech at UCLA's Social Cognition Lab found that vagal tone, a measure of emotional attunement, increased significantly when dialogues occurred at 25 to 35 offset rather than face-to-face. When these three lenses align, flow, rhythm, and drive, the result is alchemy. The chair turns, the breath deepens, the conversation flows like spring runoff over stone. The room seems to lean with you, gently opening. Confidence doesn't surge, it settles, quietly anchoring. See it unfold in 3 cinematic beats. Beat 1, resistance to drift. A candidate marches straight in, sits square on. Overhead vents flutter, resumes. Sweat blooms, words stammer. The frame cools. Beat to drift to current. Now, the same candidate angles 15 degrees. Light skims her cheek. The room hushes. The rhythm returns. Colors warm. Beat 3 current to overdrive. A final pivot to the metal water diagonal. Shoulders soft, eyes alert. A jade river overlays a silver blade. Words flow before thought completes. Panelists nod before the sentence ends. The heartbeat steadies beneath it all. Skeptics will ask, can posture really alter fate? The answer lies not in magic, but in latency. The angle does not guarantee success, but it strips away resistance, restoring the mind's capacity for wit, presence, and grace. You are not rewriting the script. you are removing static from the signal. And what of constraints? In 2020, a Singapore fintech firm conducted blind interviews behind screens. Candidates couldn't adjust seats, yet those who had rehearsed diagonal body posture scored higher in vocal modulation and rhythm. The spatial rehearsal had engraved a cadence into the breath itself. Meanwhile, in Tokyo, a firm remodeled office layouts to mimic textbook Feng Shui, but ignored psychological safety. The result? Increased turnover. Direction alone cannot redeem dissonance. From this interplay arises a working triad. 1. Plane of flow, seek the midstream, away from vents, aligned with breeze, tuned to motion. 2. Plane of duality, let posture breathe, lean and soften, push and yield, in rhythm with your breath. 3. Plane of identity, map autonomy, competence, and relatedness as physical axes. Become the ideogram, Xuan. Where these three meet is the auspicious interview direction at mysticism, but a design loop connecting physics, biology, and meaning. The loop recurs across scales. In urban planning, streets angled off cardinal directions catch cooling winds. In interface design, modal windows offset from center feel gentler. In jazz, syncopation places notes slightly offbeat, creating swing. Even in particle physics, quarks exhibit asymptotic freedom only when not perfectly aligned. Force softens at the diagonal. Return to the interview. The panel arrives. You are already aligned. Mirror neurons begin their quiet echo. Your presence pulls their shoulders into micro-adjustments. Empathy begins before you speak. Like a conductor tuning the orchestra through their own breath, your alignment reshapes the room. This is the molten core of the metaphor. Metal cuts, water carries. Their diagonal is not an element, but a conversation. An interview, too, is such a fusion. Your brilliance, metal must pierce. Your adaptability, water must flow. And the angle you choose is the hinge where blade meets river, where pressure becomes momentum and silence becomes offer. In the next section, we'll unpack the toolkit: index card compasses, smartphone inclinometers, breath patterns. But these are the raft. The blueprint is here. Flow is your river. Yin-yang is your oar. Motivation is your horizon. Adjust until the spoon steadies, and the current will carry you. You do not need a jade compass, a Feng Shui master, or a marble-columned hall to apply this wisdom. In fact, you already carry all the tools. This is not about ritual incense or ancestral chants. It's about a method of attunement to space. In this chapter, we unpack that method into a set of practical steps, each as precise as it is subtle. You will need a smartphone, a quiet sense of presence, and the willingness to make a 3-degree adjustment that might change everything. Step 1. Locate your metal water. Quadrant: begin before you arrive. Look up the location of your interview. Site on a digital map. Use a compass app to orient the building's entrance relative to true north. Remember, in 5-element theory, metal rules clarity, logic, articulation. Water governs adaptability, intuition, and calm. They're merging quadrant northwest to northeast, where decisive logic meets emotional intelligence. This is your anchor zone. Once you know the room layout, identify seating options that place you diagonally across from the interviewer, with your body oriented roughly between 315 and 360 NW2N. If this isn't possible, prioritize positioning that avoids directly facing or turning your back to the door, turbulence and vulnerability, sitting under harsh downward lights or a sea vents, disruption of ki facing a blank wall without peripheral. Movement, mental stagnation if you're unsure of direction upon arrival, discreetly open a compass app. Position your chair so your chest faces the metal water arc. Even if you're one of several candidates in a group setting, this micro-adjustment subtly shifts your presence toward coherence. Step 2. Tune your breath before you speak. You breathe. This is not metaphorical. A study from the University of Zurich found that respiratory rhythms deeply influence how we evaluate strangers. Breath sets tone. The optimal rhythm is the 4-beat in, 6-beat out cycle, a naturally calming pattern that activates the parasympathetic nervous system. When you first sit down, anchor yourself with 3 cycles of this breath. Inhale silently. Exhale to 6 through the nose. This softens your facial tension, deepens vocal resonance, and stabilizes micro movements. Now, synchronize your spatial rhythm to your breath. Each question is a tide. Lean forward on inhale, release on exhale. This isn't choreography, it's presence made visible. The room will feel it before it sees it. Step 3. Align your gaze. Eye contact can pierce, but it can also anchor. The optimal gaze pattern is what Japanese call enman nami suki, round, smooth eyes. Not wide, not fixed, but lightly held. The Harvard Negotiation Project calls this the triangular gaze. Rotate your focus gently between the eyes, mouth, and eyebrows of your interviewer. If seated diagonally, this gaze lands as steady but non-threatening, creating what neuropsychologists call shared attunement. At the start of the interview, let your eyes momentarily sweep the room. This sets the spatial claim. I am present in this field. Then return to soft eye contact. Your gaze now becomes a directional vector, not a spotlight. Think invitation, not interrogation. Step 4. Set your posture. Triangle. Draw an invisible triangle. Spine upright, chin level, hands resting lightly on thighs or notebook. The triangle should feel like a mountain base, stable, immovable, but your shoulders are clouds loose, slow shifting. This duality is vital. Tension below, fluidity above. It reflects the ancient ideal of being firm in root, soft in canopy, like a pine in the snow. When responding to a question, subtly mirror the body language of the interviewer, but only by a third. If they lean, you tilt slightly. If they cross arms, rest your hands in open palm. This reduces perceived social friction by over 40%. According to 2021 data from the University of Oxford's Empathy Lab. Step 5. Use the anchoring object. Bring one neutral object that quietly roots your presence. This can be a black notebook, a smooth stone, a silver pensamething that aligns with metal or water qualities, precision, reflection, stillness. Place it carefully before you begin. This is not a talisman, it is an anchor. When under stress, briefly touch or adjust this object. It re-engages your somatic center, creating a micro-reset. In cognitive behavioral terms, this is a grounding gesture, a return point. In traditional Taoist practice, similar tokens were known as Zhen Wu stabilizers. Hidden beneath robes or sleeves, they served as weight and memory. Your anchoring object modernizes this principle. Step 6. Exit with direction. The interview ends, but your impression lingers in spatial memory. As you rise, do not pivot directly to the door. Instead, stand slowly, Gather your items with presence and rotate clockwise through the same metal-water quadrant you entered from. If possible, pass through a lighted space or pause slightly before re-entering the corridor. This closing arc signals completion. Ritual psychologists term this a loop seal. It marks not just the end of dialogue, but a contained cycle of presence. It is the closing of your key field with grace. Recap the spatial ritual in 6 steps. 1. Orient. 2. Metal water. 315 minus 360. Logic meets calm. 2. Inhale to 4. Exhale to 6. Presence begins with breath. 3. Gaze as vector, not beam. Look softly, anchor gently. Posture equals mountain plus cloud, rooted and fluid. 5. Anchor object. Subtle reset precision becomes ritual. 6. Exit with clockwise seal. Leave as you arrived. Aware, these gestures are so small, they're nearly invisible. And yet, when layered, they weave an energy signature far louder than words. You're not trying to impress, you're shaping field resonance. Interviews are not only scored on content, but on coherence. You bring your coherence with you. It begins with knowing where to sit in the next and final section. We'll explore the deeper paradox. If such minor shifts in direction carry such weight, what does that tell us about the architecture of choice itself? And if space can be this wise, what else is trying to speak to you through silence? If a mere shift of 15 degrees can alter your interview outcome, what else quietly, invisibly has been steering your life all along? This is the paradox of direction. We often believe choices are made at the level of content, what we say, the skills we bring, the logic of our answers. But space listens before sound. Before words reach the ear, posture shapes the field. Before logic lands, energy speaks. Feng Shui, literally, wind and water, has always suggested that what moves us is not always seen, and what determines outcomes is not always spoken. In ancient China, sages mapped human experience not as a list of achievements, but as a sequence of alignments. Direction was not just physical, it was ethical, seasonal, cosmic. In the Book of Rites, Li Jing, back to the Western Han Dynasty 202 BCE, 209 CE, we read, when facing the south, the ruler harmonizes with heaven. When listening from the north, he aligns with the people. Here, sitting direction reflects not status, but relationship. South is not better than north. It simply means outward, toward heaven. North is inward, toward earth. In a corporate office or Zoom interview, the same principle ripples beneath the surface. What direction are you facing at? Just in space, but in intention. Are you speaking to impress or to connect? Are you sitting to perform or to receive? The 5 element cycle, wood, fire, earth, metal, water, is not just a cosmological chart, but a mirror for internal process. When you sit in the metal-water quadrant, you sit in a dialogue between precision and fluidity. You are not choosing between confidence and humility. You are expressing both simultaneously. Metal cuts, water flows. Together, they form the shape of wise speech, sharp enough to be heard, soft enough to be accepted. This is not about superstition. It is about subtlety. In a culture obsessed with performance metrics and verbal acrobatics, there is radical power in attending to the invisible, the tilt of a chair, the weight of breath, the warmth of light. You become a sculptor not only of message, but of moment. Think of great orators. Think of how they occupy space before they speak. Think of musicians before the first note, how their silence already holds the rhythm. Now imagine entering your next interview, not as an applicant, but as a field, not trying to do anything, but allowing presence to become something. In that stillness, the 15-degree turn is no longer small. It is the physical embodiment of a larger choice, to live in attunement rather than reaction, to direct rather than drift, to align with rather than against. So ask yourself now, what direction is your desk facing? Your body as you read this. Your goals, sir, they still pointed toward where your soul meant to go. The path is not always a road. Sometimes it's an angle. The wise adjust to the flow of heaven and earth, whispers the Tao to Jing chapter 25. They do not force the river to turn. They step into its curve. Let this final truth settle in. Auspiciousness is not random. It's relational. It lives in the conversation between you and the space you enter, between you and the direction you choose. Your chair is waiting. Which way will you turn? If this opened something within you, don't just click away. Look around the room. Feel the light. Find north. Rotate a little. Leave a comment sharing your own ritual of presence. And share this with someone who might be walking into a door soon, unsure of how to sit. Sometimes the smallest realignments reveal the most hidden truths.